Our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas, is here. Craig, I just want you to listen to another little bit of Donald Trump and tell me who you think he sounds like, and it's not a Republican. Have a listen.
We are going to fix our inner cities and rebuild our highways, bridges, tunnels, airports, schools, hospitals. We're going to rebuild our infrastructure, which will become, by the way, second to none. And we will put millions of our people to work as we rebuild it.
Oh, there you go, Craig. A lot of public spending coming up.
Yeah, reminds me of another president from New York State, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. What you heard there were the opening lines for a Nouveau New Deal. That's pretty much what Roosevelt said when he was elected and the country was reeling from the Great Depression. Now, to be sure, Trump doesn't have the great wise men that Roosevelt had around him. But this is what he's talking about. No one knows whether the guy's a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. But he's basically talking a New Deal socialist policy to rebuild America. And that originally was called the New Deal.
Well, maybe he's just a pragmatist. Let's see. We're going to go back now to New York, to Times Square, and Azhar Sukri is there for us. We've looked at what's happened, Azhar. Now we need to look at what's happening, the reaction on the markets. How has it been?
As the results were coming through, pointing to a Trump victory, we saw the Dow futures absolutely plunging through the floor, pointing to a very, very weak opening on Wall Street. Those early figures were pointing to possibly the worst drop on the Dow Jones Industrial Average since the Brexit vote in June, and that was massive. When the markets actually did open, yes, we did see a fall initially, but you look at the numbers now, the Dow Jones is up about 1%, the S&P 500 up about 1%, the NASDAQ also up slightly. The big hit did actually come overseas in Japan on the Nikkei 225 and the Hang Seng, and also in the dollar. We've seen the dollar strengthening against major currencies. So predictions of the sky falling down, for the moment, seem to have been abated.
OK, Azhar, thank you very much for that. Let's go to Peter Schiff now. He's the CEO of Euro-Pacific Capital, and he joins us live from Westport in Connecticut. Peter, thank you for joining us on Money Talks. Just want to pick up on what's going on in Wall Street there. Not the apocalypse people were predicting. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, I never really understood why Wall Street thought that Hillary Clinton's election was going to be a positive for the economy or for business. After all, she was promising more government, more regulation, more taxes. None of this would be good for American industry. And so I think people realize that maybe a Trump victory isn't all as bad as it was sold, because they were trying to scare everybody into voting for Hillary Clinton. I think that was similar to the way the powers that be were trying to scare the British into remaining in the EU. But what really powered Donald Trump was the reality that the American economy is a disaster and the recovery of fiction. That the last 8 years where President Obama was taking credit for a recovery, in reality, we never recovered at all. The economy has been getting sicker and sicker for the past 8 years, and the American voters refused to vote for a candidate who was promising more of the same.
And if you were to pick any particular economic, financial point, was it wages, was it jobs? Add a little detail to that for us, will you?
Well, it was all of it. I mean, people were losing jobs. I mean, people used to have good paying full-time jobs. Now they have multiple low-paying part-time jobs. Millions and millions of people have left the labor force entirely. The number of Americans living in poverty has risen substantially during this so-called recovery, which for most people is actually worse than the recession that they're trying to pretend that we've recovered from. But I think the worst part is, as bleak a picture as Donald Trump painted of the U.S. economy, and certainly one that resonated with voters, he was sugarcoating it. The U.S. economy is in much worse shape than even Donald Trump acknowledged, and a lot of the spending that he's now talking about on infrastructure and on building up our military is impossible given how broke we already are. We have a mountain of debt, and the only thing keeping it from collapsing is that the Federal Reserve has been able to keep interest rates at these artificially low levels. Look at what's happening to bond yields today. They are surging, and this is going to continue, and this is going to put the brakes on all of this government spending talk. What we really need is massive cuts in government spending, and that means if we're really going to have a recovery, Donald Trump's going to have to break a lot of promises early with respect to increasing government spending and not making cuts in entitlements like Social Security, because that's badly needed.
Okay, a politician breaking his promises early. Okay, Peter Schiff, let's see if that actually happens.